We are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends, and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers & George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments, and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet. With IHM, contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And today we're going to be talking about what is the value of private members clubs. If this is the first time you've joined me or Boutique Hotel News in a webinar, my name is Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of hospitality at Boutique Hotel News, and we are a global trade multimedia platform covering the boutique, lifestyle, and luxury hotel sectors. A brief overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes chatting with our panelists today, followed by any questions to take from the floor. So if you do have any questions today, please submit these using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and I will get round to asking those where appropriate. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and everybody that has registered will receive a copy of that recording within 2 days' time. So let's meet our speakers, and I'm going to move from left to right as per the PowerPoint slides to ask each to introduce themselves individually. So Michael, let's kick off with yourself. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Ackenbaum. I'm from Gansport Hotel Group, 724 Collective, which is a new membership club in New York, and formerly of the Curtain Club in London. Most recently, obviously, as I said, we just opened the Curtain Club, the 724 Collective in Manhattan, in the Meatpacking District. We recently finished a complete renovation of the original flagship hotel, the Gansevoort, New York, and we're in pre-development of a luxury hotel in the Hudson Valley.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Harry, over to you, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Harry Harris. I run a small development agency called SUSD here in London. We very happily worked with Michael on the Curtain a few years ago and brought the Devonshire Club through, and recently we've been working with the Shiva Group on the Bowtree Hotel, which has quite a large F&B and club component with the Tower Group, and we're working on a couple of other hotels and clubs in London which are just about still starting on site but not actually complete yet.
Thank you, Harry. And last but not least, Muriel, over to you.
Hi, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Muriel, and I'm the Global Director for Culture and Membership for Circle Collection. Circle Collection is a boutique hotel group with the headquarters based in Amsterdam. And we created our first members club model 2020 through the pandemic and launched our first cover club in Barcelona, which we will celebrate soon the 3rd birthday. And we also have 4 construction sites currently for more members clubs, which will all open this year in very different regions and very different cities. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's a great way to connect to cities, to communities, bring culture, bring a fresh approach. And yeah, this is us.
Thank you all. And just to flag here that the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers have been popped into the chat. I actively encourage you all to connect and carry on this conversation long after today's webinar has finished. So before we jump into the main discussion today, I always like to do a bit of scene setting. I like to provide some context to what we're going to be talking about today. And many hotel brands have launched private members clubs over the years. Rosewood, Salt Hotels, Athos Hotels, and more have all introduced an exclusive offering for paying members. I've also seen really specific memberships launched at hotels, including your traditional spa/wellness offering, as you can see at Hallcross Hall, and also a shareholders members program, which Selena introduced last year. And all of this is happening against a very challenging economic backdrop. There have been some very unfortunate closures of members clubs over the years, and the most recent that BHN has covered are the 2 Birch lifestyle clubs in the UK, which fell into administration in November 2023. On the next slide, Soho House recently suggested that it could become a private company this autumn following an internal review. And the announcement was released at the same time the company fundamentally rejected a GlassHouse Research report which valued Soho House at nil. Soho House is actually due to release its financial statement tomorrow, which we'll all be paying close eyes and attention to. And a column by Danny Rogers in the newspaper earlier this week argues that Soho House is very successful. The conundrum it faces is, how do you scale and commercially exploit scarcity and exclusivity? It's the question that he posed in that column. And talking of scale, I tried my best with the resources that I had to look in terms of market size and potential growth of the private members club sector. And Grand View Research reported that the global private members club market size was valued at $2.69 billion in 2020, with a projected reach of $4.73 billion by 2027. So that is growing at an annual, a compound annual growth rate of 7.9%. The far right screenshot on your slides here is a report by GGA Partners. It provides quite an interesting insight from club leaders around such things as industry growth, financial health, what members value, etc., etc. And to highlight very briefly the exact summary of that report, members are joining clubs younger and they are using the premises more, which is leading to some challenge around managing amenity capacity and potentially spending whilst they are actually on these premises. Entrance fees and annual memberships continue to be the leading sources of capital funding, and the biggest financial challenge cited by club leaders were rising labour costs and staff retention. So I hope that gives some background as to what we are going to be talking about today. So let's talk about the value of private members clubs, and I would very much like to kick off with a question to Harry. Harry, can you please provide a snapshot overview of the private members club market here in London?
I'll try. I'll give it a go. It's quite a wide question. I mean, obviously, the background and the history to private members clubs in London were all the traditional sort of old boys clubs that have been around for hundreds of years. but has now kind of moved, or certainly in the last 10, 20 years, moved to sort of more boutique offers, you know, really kind of family investments. And they're kind of, you know, one-offs really, and they're not widely traded assets. I mean, probably one of the most successful in recent years has got to be the Arts Club, and what Gary Landsberg did there. You know, they did it off a really, really low capital base, refinanced it, or basically sale and lease back for 90 million, 25-year lease back to themselves. It's thrown off about sort of 30 to 40 million turnover a year. Very, very successful wide membership, you know, and off a very small, I mean, the original club was only about 14,000 square feet. So very, very small, high value asset, got in at the right time, but it's got to be one of the most successful clubs that's been traded. I mean, we'll come on to the whole Soho House story, but really that's a massive success. You know, anything that can generate 190,000 members worldwide, you know, grow to sort of 85 properties is a massive success. You can chip away at the model and look at their debt and all the other indices, but realistically it's a massively successful asset or venture that started in London. And then recently in the press today, Groucho announcing that they're expanding finally after, you know, 40 years or 50 years. But there's still definitely appetite there. I think the valuation part is the really, really tricky part. It's not an easily recognizable asset class, and valuers really struggle with valuing it. They treat it like a hotel, which it's not. I mean, obviously lots and lots of members clubs have rooms, but it's very, very F&B dependent. And that traditionally gets massively discounted by valuers because of the risks there and the slender margins on F&B. So I think valuers do have a very, very difficult time valuing it. But in terms of London, you look at the investment that's gone on very recently. You look at Annabelle's, 5 Hertford Street, Maison Estelle, you know, some incredible clubs have opened or reopened, refurbished, whatever you want to call it. But they're aimed very much at the high end. And again, we'll talk about this later on, but traditionally, those have been based off of very high net worths, very high earning capacity, actually do want exclusivity and want the exclusivity of being a member of something that's difficult to get in. It's very, very expensive. I think that's changing quite dramatically. You know, I think it's a real trade-off, exclusivity versus inclusivity these days, and the younger market aren't really about the exclusivity angle. You know, they're much more about the inclusivity, which I think is going to give some clubs a difficult problem. But the valuers, I still think it's a very, very hard market to value, and there aren't very many recognized valuers who are expert in this field. And I know Michael and I have been through the process of trying to get valuations, and it's difficult. You know, you have a real battle with the valuer to properly recognize the income streams and the value. You know, the valuers, I think, get very obsessed with attrition rates on the membership, for instance, and what they look at is sort of occupancy levels, how many members are coming, how many times they're coming, how much they're spending per head. And that market's changing quite a lot. So, you know, at the upper end, I think the values are incredibly good, but it's definitely widening now to a much broader market, a younger market. So the average spend is lower, excuse me, and the offer to those people in the younger market is much wider. You know, there's a lot more that they can join, and they're operating on a much kind of more common subscription type model, whereas members clubs, I don't think really on a subscription model per se. You want people to come in and be part of a community.
Mike, can I bring you into the
Sure.
fold here and ask, you know, we're going to do a bit of a comparison here, 2 major cities, London and New York, but what's been your perspective over in New York? Same question around the snapshot overview of the members club market.
Well, we cut our teeth on this issue in London, so we sort of have a bit of a London perspective on it. But At the same time, in New York, you're seeing a huge growth factor in groups that want to enter this market and are either in the middle of it or have already, you know, acquired an asset or are looking for assets. We recently opened a club in the city. New York is a different beast, though, than anything else in the United States. New York has very specific liquor license laws about private membership. You have to be a not-for-profit in New York State to be a private members club. So if you're looking for value, you really have to look at the assets around it and how you're increasing, you know, the value of the hotel because you're bringing culture into your property, or how you're, you know, changing the perception of your asset on some level. So New York is very different than the rest of the United States because of that issue. As far as lenders, the way they look at it, Harry's very right. It's basically an F&B experience that they're going to consider it. The retention rate becomes everything in the eyes of the lenders. And there are not very many lenders that have any sense of how to value it. So it's a long discussion right now in especially in New York on how you add value to your asset by doing it. We believe, and I think it's Muriel, right? That culture is a very big component of it, and programming is a very big component of what you're really adding to the experience. Utilizing underutilized spaces because you have a hotel, and have those spaces sort of, you know, culturally shared between your clients for the hotel and the membership is a very big bonus to everyone involved, and introducing those people and allowing them to network amongst themselves. And that's a big thing right now. One of the things I learned in London was I tried to bring an incredible slew of high-end musical talent to an area that I thought would really be well received, world-class talent. And my clients just weren't that receptive to it. And what they really were receptive to was cultural events, networking events, things about technology, things about environmental issues, women's issues, LGBTQ issues. And so we ended up leaning in much more into the programming, leaning towards those kinds of events and away from sort of one-off exposures to unique talent. While we tried to mix that in, it really became less of a thing. And also cost-wise, much more able to afford, because what you end up doing is speaking to your own membership about what would they want to do and how do they bring in their own kind of experiences to benefit the other members as well. So that's I guess a little bit about our experience. You know, just a quick note about New York. It feels like it's back. It's a huge difference for the last 18 months from where things were. Rates on the hotel side are really up. Membership sales are quickening, but there's a lot of players coming into the market. So that's our perspective.
Thank you. And before we jump over to Muriel to build on the culture aspect and what members are now looking for, Harry and maybe Mike, I'll bring you both into this to look at how the model is now going to evolve. Michael, you just mentioned that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of demand, people are buying assets. So with that in mind, how do you see the model evolving? What are those key industry trends that we should be watching?
Well, something that Harry said, a lot of what Harry said, I agree with. There's a reason why I guess we're friends and do business together. But I do believe that you cannot grow exponentially with a club model if you want it to really make sense financially. You can grow it and you can do a number of clubs, but you cannot go into secondary markets and expect to be able to maintain. You cannot open 6 venues in the same city unless you're really shuttling the same really successful clients around. I do think that on some level, you have to have a client that has a certain earnings potential for themselves and what they can afford to spend and what their disposable income is, because to fill a venue with people who don't spend doesn't work. So I think the smartest thing in my mind that Soho House may be announcing, because it sounds like it's a possibility, is going private again, because being forced to grow is not a great business model for membership clubs. You need to really be selective about the locations and your strategy. And I think that having gone public, which they had their reasons to do, was a negative for them, in my opinion. So I think you're going to see that people are going to try to grow it, but they're not going to grow 30, 40 units. They're going to try to grow to 6 to 10 units and turn it into a cash flowing business model versus, and not necessarily try to take it public, or it becomes a public component of a larger asset like a hotel chain, where it's adding value to the people who are consistent clients at that hotel chain, but the upper tier clients. That's where I think things are headed.
Yeah.
Harry,
I'd
what are
agree
your
with that.
thoughts?
I think I'd add to that it's so capital intensive traditionally, because you want to operate in a good place, whether that's London or New York or Paris, and the real estate is expensive. And traditionally, people are attracted to these places because of the architecture or the property. They're generally in very, very nice buildings, and they cost a lot to fit out. And so the capital entry is incredibly high. But that's worked in the past because, I'll quote back to, you look at the Groucho or the Arts Club, they're relatively small buildings, but they're in great locations and they're really beautiful buildings. Excuse me. They cost a lot, but you can make that very intensive on one site and one small building, and you can really work it. Trying to put that across many, many buildings and large buildings without maybe the architectural interest or the interior design interest, I think is very challenging.
Let's bring Muriel into the conversation here, and it's been touched on regarding what people are looking for. On the location piece, I know anecdotally, just from speaking to my network, that location is probably one of the most important factors when looking at maybe the reasons of why to sign up to a private members club. So with that in mind, Muriel, what insights can you share around what today's travelers and members value from clubs?
Yeah, I totally agree with a location. That's why also when we were kind of sitting together and it was like the owner of Circle Collection was like, yeah, Muriel, go ahead, start the first members club. Where do you want to do it? And I was like, Barcelona makes sense because Sir Victor in Barcelona is like super central. Yeah, then it was very interesting to plug a members club concept into an existing hotel operation, right? So the facilities were there. We needed fairly little investment in order to turn them into beautiful member spaces. And it was a learning because, of course, like an operation, like a hotel operation, the reception team is not very keen on now also looking after members and checking them in. So it was a lot of like internal work and explanation. And now we have our reception team loving our members and being so happy that they can actually establish this very personal daily conversation and human touch. And what I can also see is that it's extremely valuable for expats living in Barcelona, our club concept. I get a lot of emails from people saying, thank you, you changed my life, like landing in this city. I have my community, I found my romantic partner, I found my business partner. You made my life easy to land and gave me a sense of belonging, which is beautiful. But of course, we don't only want to have expats. We are not a club for expats. So the way we are now navigating is really bringing more locals in through the committee, doing also more content in Spanish, not only in English. So it's an ever evolving journey, and yeah, it's beautiful to shape it and also to see how, what is the need, what is changing over the years. And the whole concept of the cover is actually based on 3 pillars, which is well-being. So we look at the topic of well-being, not only having a gym and a spa and doing programming around the body, but also the mind. So it's a lot about mental well-being as well. The second pillar is business. So we have a co-working space where members can go and work all day and not consume a coffee, which is okay. There is a dedicated space. But then we have the social space where they have to, also spend something. And then we have 2 restaurants which are open for public and for hotel guests, where member get some benefits, and they use it so much. It was very interesting to see like what were the spend coming additionally in from members also in those public areas, which is a great add-on, and also members having access to all of our hotels. So when they travel, they book Sir Hotels or Max Brown Hotels or any hotel of Circle Collection. So there's this added value. Now it is very interesting to going to a city like Vienna, for example, where there is no members club culture whatsoever. So there we really need to do that. The groundwork and explaining what is a private members club and what is the value we are bringing. And we also see that the needs are different. So I look at any of our cities and destinations and club concepts very uniquely and individual, and really build a local team to also understand what does this community exactly there. And then location is again key. In Vienna, for example, we are in the 7th district, which is the very creative younger district. So what are the needs there compared to London, where we will be at Devonshire Square, kind of bridging the city and Shoreditch together. So it's a lot about being really sensitive and listening and understanding the location, the community there, and how to target it.
Can I comment on something Muriel said? I think one of the most important things she said is value proposition. In both locations, in the Curtain, when we had done the Curtain, which we had sold, and then in New York, we really firmly believe that you give value, because one, you're seeing competition, right? So if you're just a supper club, you're a supper club, and people may or may not join many supper clubs, right? But if you give them a product that is, you come in the morning, which this is what we've designed in New York. You come in the morning, you have a location that's your cafe. You can work from that cafe, but you can then go downstairs. We built a beautiful gym with incredible equipment, changing rooms, dry heat, infrared heat. Then we move you back upstairs, and you have the cafe to work from. You have the study to have, daytime meetings in the study, which feels like you're in an English, classic English club. You have, your Murano glass chandelier. You have your beautiful House of Hackney wall coverings, beautiful red velvet kind of couches. But at the same time, you can do programming in those spaces. So that's, we lean in the evenings into our programming. You can teach people to cook. You can give whiskey tastings, all those various kinds of options with speakers and so on. And then we move you to our pool area. So you have access to a pool. And then late night, we move you into a nightclub space, which has bowling and karaoke and has, a beautiful, rich looking bar area. So we are trying to give someone that you don't have to choose 5 different clubs. You have your entire day from morning till night in our venue. I think what you're going to see is the growth of exponential growth of small clubs where it just is a dinner space and no one's coming during the day and not utilizing it the other times. You cannot make money if you're just running it as a supper club. You have to service it. You have to stay open during the day. So you really need to get people to have a reason for people to be drawn in during the day, and to keep them here and have them spend throughout the day. And that's why it also does work nicely in a hotel where you can have shared amenities. You might have to do a slightly larger version of your amenity, but as long as you can share that expense, which you were largely incurring anyway, I think that's really where there's an opportunity to really make money and grow these things, is by giving value in a manner that the client feels like this is their club and this is the one they really want to be a participant in.
This was exactly our idea, that we really have an environment you can spend all day. Now looking at the profile of our members, there are those members who are coming because of the gym and the cold plunge, and there are those members who mainly come to work from there, and those who use the social aspect more, but it's kind of an organic, it comes together nicely. And during the day, there's always a buzz, there's always a good feeling, which is great to see.
Can I add into that? Because I think the program that a members club runs is so important, and Michael talked about the curtain, but the curtains program, I think, did represent really good value for money for its members. You know, there was really interesting events going on, constant program of very, very different variety. And I think that's what's very good about Groucho, very good about Annabelle's, you know, that their program, they invest very heavily into that. And I think members are quick to sort of walk away if the program is poor.
But I think the investment, Harry, that you're saying, it's not necessarily cash. It's investment in your staff. It's investment in your staff. Or yeah, it's investment in making sure that you're bringing in things, whether it's free because your clients are themselves the programming. So you know, you say to you know, that's the great thing. If you have the right client base, you go to them and you say, hey, what event would you like? And then they bring in their friends, and then they join because they experience it. You know, so that I think that's really also another way to grow is with the right program, because you say to your members, bring your friends to these things. This is an opportunity for them to see us at our best, but also for them to get value as well. So I think it's a big part of it.
Totally. We have these very engaged members. They have the subcommittee, the business subcommittee, and they come up with the business off and invite different speakers from different industries, excuse me. And that's initiative from themselves. They are not getting paid for that. They just love to contribute and yeah, create meaning and share. And yeah, that's great.
Looking at the programming, the cultural programming of members clubs, but also all the facilities and the amenities, from co-working to a spa to F&B to karaoke rooms, you can see why lifestyle hotels is quite a natural fit for the members club to be co-opted, introduced. There is a synergy there between the two, if you want to separate the two asset classes. And with that in mind, staying with you, Muriel, can you define or maybe separate the profitability of a club versus a hotel?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's very different. The revenues coming in from a hotel are so much higher. But when you can plug in the membership model in an existing hotel operation, the margins are super high because the costs attached to plainly membership are very, very low. So it's a great add-on when you look at the EBITDA from the members club.
Mm-hmm. Michael, you chimed in a moment ago about the value proposition, and I want to sit on this and unpick it a bit more here. How do you arrive at value? And I'm twisting it from an owner's point of view here. Do you look at the trading performance of the club? Is it in reference to the rent and the real estate? I know Harry mentioned that trying to arrive at value has been tricky in the past, but how do you, what's been your experience?
In New York, it's very different. So as I said, New York, it's twofold, right? So you have shared costs, so you can absorb some of your costs because it is still a not-for-profit, right? So you have some shared costs which can offset costs because you're entitled to pay part of your real estate taxes and you're entitled to those things, so you're offsetting existing costs. At the same time, the rent is clearly a factor. So there is a rent factor that you're built in, that you're paying your if you're the same owner, which not always is the case, right? But if you're the same owner, and you can't technically be an owner of a club in New York, it's very tricky, the language around it. But if you're the board member and you're renting it to a similarly controlled entity, you can use that rent to justify a significant multiple for the benefit of your future refinance, for example, of the hotel itself or the commercial asset that it's sitting in. In London, though, we were able to prove out that we could make money as the club. We had separate books for each department, and we were able to sell the hotel at a significant number compared to our original capital investment. So it is possible to do it, and it is very possible to keep separate books, but where there are shared costs, you just have to allocate appropriately. So, it's the problem isn't functionally doing it. The problem is lenders buying into it because they just don't understand the trades. They don't understand how you run your asset and how you grow it and maintain it. And so they're always going to look at it as an F&B operation. So they're going to value it like an F&B tenant is your tenant, whether or not that's true or not, whether your likelihood of long-term success is different than a restaurant's long-term success. That's how they're most likely going to value it, because that's the closest analogy in their minds. And to be honest with you, I was a banker. The banker's mindset is not as creative as the people who are doing what we're doing. So, in most cases, and you need a creative banker, and they do exist, but you need a creative banker who's willing to dig in with you to really understand the asset, to really give you fair value on it.
Harry, what's your take on this?
I'd echo a lot of what Michael says, and as I said at the beginning of the talk, that the valuers are really from traditional valuations on hotels. So it's taken a bit of a time to sort of pick it up. I looked before we came on the call, though, I looked a little bit because so Starwood Capital just bought the Edwardian group of hotels, 10 hotels, 2,000 beds roughly, 800 million valuation, supposedly, from what I could see. Well, Soho House have got just over 1,000 rooms. They're effectively a hotel operation, so you could easily place a valuation of 800 million just on the hotel component. 200,000 members paying, whatever you take, you pick 1,500 quid on average. Well, that's 300 million just from the membership income. So you're talking very big numbers. They've obviously got huge numbers in terms of their fixed costs and their staffing and all the rest of it, and rent, as Michael said. So, they can be valued, but when you look at just the club component, I think the valuers get obsessed with the fact that it's members. How many times are they going to come a week? Are they going to have loyalty, et cetera, which I think comes back to the program and the kind of cultural events program. If you're really, really got a good events program, you've got loyalty from your membership, you've got a much better chance at showing that valuation, really. But we worked with the Collective, which was co-living. Reza Merchant, very sadly went bust in lockdown, but it was a very, very clever model, and he truly believed in it, and he almost got there. If it hadn't been for COVID, I think he would have been, a complete unicorn type model. But the one we worked on down in Canary Wharf, the public spaces and the amenity spaces were easily as good as a Soho House. Rooftop swimming pool, beautiful, incredible club areas, shared kitchens, a disco laundry, like everything, incredible. And the appeal there was a much broader mass appeal. It operates almost like a hotel, co-living maybe, but it was 1,500 quid a month for somebody to go there. All their bills are in. So for the sort of 35 year old age group, it was great. They pay one bill, that's everything done, and then they've effectively got a Soho House on their doorstep and their own gym and their own pool. So that kind of hybrid model, I think, works very, very well, and valuers can get their head around that. Even that, though, Cheney Capital funded that originally, 100%, and we brought in Lloyds to take a 50 million loan, I think, on that. It was barely 50% debt. And they really struggled to value it because it wasn't a traditional hotel model. There was a sort of subscription come membership component. It was slightly reliant upon the program that you offered those residents. And for Lloyds Bank, it was a massive challenge. So it's still, I think, challenging to the valuers. But I come back to the other point that, I think the traditional membership model of a smallish building, very beautiful building, very high in value real estate, and then you plug in with a successful membership around that, that is much easier to value.
Building on that, I want to ask Michael what he thinks differentiates successful clubs. There's been a couple of examples given, but Michael, what do you think is key to the success here?
I think some of the clubs that have really made sense, and it's an interesting model because I'm not approaching it using it, is equity holders. So you sort of offset your initial capitalization with outside equity holders. In New York, you can't do this anyway, so I can't go that route. Because I was doing it inside a hotel in London, I wouldn't have done that as well. But I do see that some of the clubs that have gone the model of selling, lifetime memberships to very successful people upfront and recapitalizing themselves immediately. Obviously, if you look at Soho House, and if they had been able to do something like that, they wouldn't have the debt levels that they're sitting with. So that's definitely a route that people can go, but you have to have a very select client base if you're going that route, right? The alternative is value. And it's going back to what Muriel and I were saying earlier, and I think Harry agrees, is you give people value, they will stick around. So I just think you have to really focus on experience, service, and value. And I just think some of the clubs, there's a very well-known club that's in New York right now, and the food is not well received, and the service is not well received, and you question its long-term longevity. And so I just think that people really have to focus on you're in the hospitality business, and sometimes people simply forget. You have to give people a sense of home, a sense of memory, and detail. And I just think people sometimes forget this is a hospitality business, and you really have to focus on the basics.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that scale and exclusivity can be balanced? I think you mentioned earlier that
I don't really think you can. I think you can do it within limit, but I think at some point it crosses over. And that's why chasing growth to chase growth because you're a public company is not something that I think really makes sense for membership clubs. Maybe I'll be proven wrong later. I don't think Soho House has proven that it is the right way to go. I think they would be better served being a private company, to be honest with you. I think they have a very talented team, and not having to grow exponentially, which is what the markets demand, is not the right methodology for a company like that to be pursuing. But I'd love to be proven wrong, because I'd love to be able to exit someday and get a valuation on a public markets valuation. But right now, I don't think it's been proven that you can go that route.
I very much agree with that. I think, especially when everything is then coming from headquarters and is kind of just scaled and same concept for everywhere, it doesn't work. You have to, you have to really be sensitive about each location. It's about the local communities living there, and you have to listen to the needs and not just say, this is the concept, boom, and it works everywhere the same, and this is the way we communicate, and this is on the menu, no matter in which city. That's not respectful.
Just look at what's going on with the classic boutique hotel brands. You're seeing, W is running around touting that they just did, can't remember, I feel like it was Algarve or something, in Portugal, and that it's about being locally designed and local foods and local this. Never before have they ever said those words, and they are breaking down their business model, and starting over and trying to relaunch their various hotels, because the perception became it's the same thing everywhere, and Soho House, while I actually like the aesthetic, it's the same thing everywhere, so there are especially this younger generation, are looking for experience. Even the successful younger part of that generation who has the money to actually spend it, which is the client you actually want, if they can spend, they want experience, and they do not want the same experience every time they walk in somewhere. So if you're going to grow, you need to take into consideration locale, and so that's a big focus for us. We're doing something in the Hudson Valley. It's going to be very fitting for that location. It's not going to be transplant my design from New York City and take it to the countryside. It's going to be, what would we think a client of ours would want that experience to be if they are in the countryside, and it's not trying to be cheesy about it, and it's not trying to pander to someone. It's doing it the right way and thinking through, how do we transfer this concept without it feeling repetitive, or that you are pandering to the lowest common denominator of what everyone else is doing. So it's tough. It's tough to balance, and that's why growth exponentially doesn't really work. That's our perspective, or my perspective. I don't know if others agree.
I mean, one way that you could measure growth or scale arguably could be through the digital memberships. And we, as a digital first company, we're, anecdotally, I can say that extending reach is absolutely fantastic. Just look at our panelists today. We're dotted all over the globe. Muriel, as somebody who is overseeing culture, what are your thoughts on digital memberships?
It's definitely not our business model. I can see how important the digital journey is, and it's also interesting how challenging it is to find the right software for exactly what a members club needs. There are a few. We built something ourselves because we couldn't really find the right model. And for us, it's very important that it has all the functionalities, be super easy to make all your bookings, reservations, hotel rooms, restaurant bookings, all the events, your massages, your gym classes, all of that, very functional. But what our members are really asking for is a digital home to connect also with each other, especially now as we're growing and we have a lot of founding members in all of our other locations, even so the clubs are not open yet. And there is this question of how can we connect with each other. So we will be launching a community app where they can connect with each other. There's already like a prototype in Barcelona so far, only for Barcelonian members who can connect with each other and organize events for each other. And it's interesting how popular it is. I didn't really believe in it, but it does really work. I think in the context of today's world, it's needed that you have a digital home, but I also believe that the human touch and the coming together offline and have really this personal moment is a really big need. What we are doing now for all members is, for example, organizing a members only weekend in our hotel in Ibiza. And so also have moments where members from different locations can come together and have this moment of connection.
I'd like to echo that. I think one of the refreshing things about members clubs is that it's still a physical connection between people and a community. Clearly, there is room for digital connection and digital platforms within that, but there is something really, really nice about the fact that it's a real community and people actually having conversations and meeting and going to events together. I'll remind everybody about the Groucho Marx quote, I don't want to belong to any club that would have people like me as a member. I think there's still room for people to have quite big, strong personalities physically and in the flesh in members clubs as opposed to digital.
How do we think then, again, I can open this up, that tech can support that member experience then? From what I gather, it's the catalyst to fostering deeper in-person connections is probably an overarching takeaway from this. But do we see just digital only members clubs launching? Is that a foreseeable, or are we very much firmly rooted in the physical?
I think they exist, don't they? But digital only. But I don't know much about them. There's VR clubs, aren't there, where you can put a headset on and go to a club without leaving your front room.
You look at Roblox, Fortnite, all the rest of it, where people are connecting online. The metaverse is probably the best example we have as a modern day one.
But I think all of us coming from hospitality, we want this moment of, eye for detail and create a space which shows beauty, which is a platform for connection. I think this is where we are coming from in this.
I think coming out of COVID, you're seeing people want connection.
Yes.
and in-person connection. So yes, there's always going to be, at this point, people who are focused on digital and that's their comfort zone. But I do think that, you saw people literally going into depression by being separated from human touch and human company, not touch necessarily, the company. And I think that's also one of the driving factors of why you're seeing membership clubs popping up right now. Is there's a whole generation that doesn't seem to normally connect in person. And this is a way for them to actually join in that and feel like they're immediately part of a community. And I think that's a very different perspective for people who are 18 to 30, largely didn't grow up with that, and that having gone through COVID, they now actually are craving some level of connectivity, and this gives them an instantaneous community.
I agree. I mean, one of the biggest diseases these days is loneliness. So
yeah.
We need more formats of coming together.
Yeah.
Something that you could argue about the younger travelers is that they are more discerning. And I've often asked, what is the value of a brand in this respect? And I have heard differing responses in that either younger crowds will either affiliate with a brand and they are hard loyalists and they will stick with that brand. Others are more open to your exclusive but inclusive independence that have a real maybe social aspect, both in the connectivity but also the social in ESG. Harry, from your perspective, what's the value of a brand versus an independent members club in this respect?
To me personally, in the projects I've been involved in, they're unbranded and purposely unbranded. There's something very nice about the uniqueness and independence of them, and I think that does really appeal to an awful lot of people. The flip side to that, though, if you have some kind of, I mean, it's difficult in the club world because there's not that many brands really, but a branded operator or an operational agreement or whatever that's going to be is going to give you far greater value with the bank, probably, because it's easily recognized. They can see that there's a management company in place that's got track record. I mean, sorry to sort of talk shop, but when Michael and I first started looking with the Curtain Club, the banks were very, very keen that it was Gansevoort branded, and they trusted Gansevoort as an operator. It had loyalty and recognition, and I don't know, I'm talking out of turn. We kind of kept them going with that idea that it was going to be Gansevoort, and then Michael released the Curtain idea, which the banks really struggled with, but it was a far better proposition and resonated with the people in Shoreditch much better than the Gansevoort. So I personally, with members clubs, branded doesn't seem to add value to the membership or the program, but it does definitely give banks an easier ride.
I think if you look at the hotel companies that are starting to do it, what you're going to find is the people that are going to be more likely to join are people who are already clients of the hotel company. I don't really see it being that big of a draw for outsiders to want to join a hotel's club system. I think people are much more interested in unique experiences right now, and it's just going to come across as a repetitive thing to them if they're joining something that is solely, like, I'm not necessarily tying my projects to Gansevoort. I'm doing, the hotel in the countryside is going to be a different brand proposition. So the experience of it being part of a hotel, but part of a hotel that is a unique brand and a unique experience makes sense to me. But doing a membership club at every single W, until W really can make their projects all seem various and different, to me doesn't really seem that interesting.
I totally agree. And for me, for example, we have the cover now in different hotel brands. So Circle Collection has 3 different brands, and we will have we have the cover in Barcelona at the Sur Hotel. In Vienna, it will be in a Max Brown. In Amsterdam, it's going to be at the W. In London, it's going to be Sur Hotel again, and in Milan, it's going to be our first alone standing brand. So it's very interesting to also have the red thread and keep the DNA and what the cover is, but it does resonate, let's say, in the design language also with those hotels it's within, right? Like this is the big challenge, but I find that also super interesting because it's not as we just said, it's not a hotel brand with a members club. it's a own brand, it's an own concept, which can be plugged into different hotel concepts, but the red thread is there. We have the same pillars, we have the same DNA, we have the same values, and that is very interesting.
Thank you. I'm looking at the time and I can see we've got 5 minutes to go. So I'm going to take this time to thank you all, Muriel, Michael, and Harry, for your insights. It's been a great conversation. There are so many avenues we could have gone down today, so I appreciate us staying on time. So thank you once again. And I just have a couple of closing slides that I would like to run through before we close off today. And I'll flag at this moment that this webinar will stay open for an extra 2 minutes at the end so that our audience members can follow up with any links that have been popped into the chat. If you haven't been able to tell from my virtual background today, the Service Department Awards are very much in full swing. Entries are open and close next week on March the 22nd. So if you're a service department operator, if you're a brand, if you're a service provider within this space, I would highly recommend you get your entries in, and we will be revealing all the winners at a black tie and ball gown ceremony on the 23rd of May in London. So the link to enter has been popped into the chat for you. And if you're interested in working with us, either across our digital outputs, such as this webinar, or our in-person events, such as the Service Department Awards, please do get in touch with my colleagues Rav or Piers. Their details are on your screens and have also been popped into the chat. So all that's left for me to do is to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you found the conversation useful. Thanks again to Michael, Muriel, and Harry for their insights. I will be back on Monday, the 15th of April, for the next BHN webinar, when we're going to be talking about harnessing data for optimum hotel performance. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks and take care. Bye now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.